Hey there, puzzlers! My name is FLEB, and today I'm starting a new series in which I hope to show you a couple of different events, magazines, and other things from around the puzzle world. For the first of these, I want to focus on a magazine that's a relative newcomer to the puzzle world, Topple. I don't want to focus on it because it has puzzles that are a little bit different than ones that I've covered so far. We've talked about mechanical puzzles, puzzle hunt puzzles, logic puzzles, twisty puzzles, but we haven't ever talked about word puzzles. And this magazine is a combination of both logic puzzles and word puzzles. This is something that you'd buy online, it costs $1, and then you'd print it out and staple it together like this so it looks kind of like a magazine. And there's a number of different puzzles in it. And they're all a good amount of fun. I had a chance to talk with the editor of Topple magazine, and I asked him if it was okay if I shared a puzzle from the magazine with all of you. And he said it was okay. He actually encouraged me to share more. But there's one puzzle in this that I particularly like, although overall I find the puzzle quality pretty high throughout the magazine. So without further ado, let's get started. The puzzle that caught my eye is this one, which is known as graham crackers. And what I really like about it is that you can solve it using some techniques from crosswords coupled with other logical techniques, such as the ones that I cover in my weekly videos on mechanical puzzles. Let's zoom in and take a look at the rules. Each of the circles here is its own individual puzzle, and what you're aiming to get out of each of these circles here is a word. Now, how do you do that? Well, if you look down here, what they're doing is each of those circles is made from a word in a certain way. For example, if the word around the circle was trying to clue mouse, what they would do is they would take bigrams or trigrams starting from the start, such as MO, which are the first two letters, then OU, which are the second two letters, US, which are the next two, and so on. And then they would take those bigrams or trigrams, depending on how many letters are in the word, and they would rearrange them and put that around the circle. So you might see something like this around the circle. And then what you would do is from this you would have to get the word mouse. You have to figure out which words belong to which bigrams and or trigrams, and then rearrange those letters in the right order to get the original word. So how does that work for one of the puzzles that are shown in the circles up here? Well, let's start with the easiest one in the center. One important thing to note here is that if you ever see a letter by itself that there's only one instance of, such as the P in the circle, that P must be either the start or the end of the word. And the reason for that is because we're taking all either bigrams or trigrams going from the start to the end. So if it only appears once, it means it is only in one bigram or trigram. And the only way that can happen is if it's the first letter or the last letter. My attention's also drawn right away to these two R's here. If these two R's were together, that would be impossible. For example, consider a word like blurry, which has two R's next to each other. If we were to break this out in terms of its bigrams, we would have RY, RR, and UR along with other bigrams. But the point is that even with the double letter, we would have two other bigrams which would have R in them. And if these two went together here like this as a bigram, or even as a trigram, we would expect to see another R somewhere in this circle. So we know right away that what we can do is put a line between these two. The next question is whether this is a bigram or a trigram stretching out each of these sides. ICR, or RCI, the two different readings, doesn't look like something that would be part of a word. So I think it's pretty safe to say that we can put a line here. IEC, or CEI, also very unlikely. I think it's safe to put a line here. And now we have a number of bigrams or trigrams that we can work with. There are going to be two C's, so we're either going to have something like ECR or RCE. RCE is much more likely just because it's a part of more words, like force. Also notice that we only have 6 letters left here. We could break it up into 3 bigrams or 2 trigrams. If we broke it up into 2 trigrams, we would have something that looks like EIER. The IER would be this trigram here, and the IE would come from this here. It could also be REIE. Both of those don't really look like great words, so this is probably broken down to 3 bigrams. Because we think RCE is much more likely than ECR, we can continue backwards from here. The other one that has an R would have an E before it. The only E that hasn't been used now is this one here, which give us an I before that. And then going before that I would be a P. And I kind of mashed it into the vine here, but the word is pierce for that inner circle. And just to double check, we can always break it down to bigrams again. P-I, I-E, E-R, R-C, C-E. All of those can be found exactly once around this circle. That's a relatively simple example. But what happens when we go for the most difficult one here, which is the outer ring? Well, now we can't really identify what's the start or the end letter because each letter appears twice. And there are no 2 letters that appear next to each other, so we can't use logic like we used here. Well, what else can we do? Well, we can look for letters that probably don't work very well together. C and G, very few words would have a C and G next to each other, so I feel pretty confident putting a line there. That means that N connects to that C. It probably goes NC and not CN, just because very few words go CN. And there's almost certainly a vowel before that N. There's only one other N on the board, so these 2 are probably connected. ENC. That looks pretty good. Lots of things have ENC in them. That G is going to connect to an E. It could be either G-E-N-C. It's not great. Or these could be the first and the last letters, which I think is much more likely. That C is going to connect to almost certainly a vowel. It could be A, it could be O. Both A and O would work there, so we can't really tell yet. And R. Not very good. R and E is a little bit better, but it's very unlikely that this is going to be a trigram, so I feel pretty confident putting a line there. And now we have 6 letters here that can be broken up either into 2 trigrams or 3 bigrams. Much like before, in the inner ring, this is almost certainly broken up into 3 bigrams instead of 2 trigrams, because of the way that those trigrams would have to interact with each other. Now that we have those, we've already used the EN, so let's mark that off. We've used the NC. That would mean this would be CO. That O could go either to the G or to a U. Incog doesn't look great. Incu looks much better. Having that U there, many more words have a U there than a G. Now I feel pretty confident this is a bigram, and that's a bigram as well. There's only one more to figure out if we have 3 bigrams here or 2 trigrams. If this were a trigram, like this would have to go U, E, G, and that looks horrible. So instead, this is going to be 3 bigrams. That U goes to an R, that R goes to an A, that A goes to a G, and that G goes to an E. And we have the word encourage. Overall, I find this puzzle interesting, because it uses a combination of techniques I would use on something like a crossword, and something I would use on a logic puzzle. You can logically figure out where some of the letters go, and then use general properties of words to figure out where the rest go. I think that Topple magazine is very interesting. I appreciate that it's had its own sort of niche inside of the puzzle world right now, and I look forward to seeing what they create in the future. Thank you very much for watching, everyone, and as always, happy puzzling!